Yeah, welcome to Ubuntu Classic TV, and this is a segment for literature. Now, I want to understand that I want to make an assumption that you have read Things Fall Apart, and of course many of you know this man called Okonkwo, who is a protagonist in this novel by Chinua Achebe. Now, but that is a different thing that I want to look at, and why I want to ask myself this basic question, that is it possible to read this book using the feminist approach, or can I be able to read this book as a woman? I mean, can I be able to use a lens of our ladies? Can I be able to use a lens of my mother? Can I use a lens of my sister in reading Things Fall Apart? Because I understand that when Chinua Achebe was writing, or otherwise when he published these works, the much intention was to respond to the colonialist mind, how they were misrepresenting Africa and African culture, African heritage, African traditions, and everything about Africa. So he wanted to respond that indeed Africa was much structured. It had its own structures in place, such that we had our own ways of governing our communities, that the elders were there to provide that wisdom. In fact, the judges of our communities. And that is some of the aspects that Chinua Achebe wanted to respond to the world, to demonstrate them that indeed we had our own way of life and not what the West was trying to do in terms of anthropological work, which they eventually made them to be like novels. Now, if you were to ask yourself this basic question, that is it possible for you to appreciate this novel, which is much of masculinity as opposed to feminism? Can you be able to get these elements that are feminism in this book? Yes, it's possible, and I will take you directly to Okonkwo's household, where we find that yes, Okonkwo as a man, indeed, he hates being associated with feminism. He hates being associated with effeminate kind of attributes. He hates this because he realized that his father, Unoka, was so poor and that he was too lazy. And the only moment this guy could even appear happy was at the time when he was consuming liquor, or at the time when he was playing his flute. And this saw to it that Unoka, who is the father of Okonkwo, died a poor man, had no title in that regard. Remember, titles in amongst the Igbo community or at large Africa were very significant, were very important. Even to this day, they are very important. They carry a lot of weight. And therefore, Okonkwo, from the very beginning, he never wanted to associate himself with his father because he wanted to come out a strong man. And that's why within a short time, he was able to be a man of bands, a man of wealth, a man of many arms, and to that regard, he received titles. And remember, he fought Amalinze the cat, and he managed to throw him on the ground, and that's why even when we go to his household, you find the second wife, Ekwefi, who has decided to abandon his own husband and to come and live with Okonkwo. Now, when Ekwefi, at the very first time when she witnessed Okonkwo fighting Amalinze and throwing Amalinze the cat on the ground, she admired him. But Ekwefi could not marry Okonkwo. Why? Because at the time Okonkwo was so poor, he could not be able to, in simple terms, to meet the demands of the bride price. He could actually not be able to pay the bride price, and therefore she married someone else. But after a short time, or so to speak, she found that Okonkwo had risen and had titles, and she decided to come to run out of her own household, her own husband, to come and live with Okonkwo. So you can look at it that this is a woman who has decided not to follow the patriarchal demands of the society, that yes, here you are married, and we're ready to marry this man, and that the bride price was paid, and therefore that's where we're going to live. Ekwefi challenges that order of society of the Igbo community, of the Umofia people, and decides to come back and seek the love of Okonkwo. She does so because she's following her heart, she's following the man she desires, she's following the man she admires. And this agency, this kind of personal independence of Ekwefi demonstrates that indeed a woman can rise up, or rather within this Igbo community, women were also able to rise above other patriarchal forms that were putting them down, that were forcing them into certain aspects of life, that were actually putting them on the lines, on the boundaries, on the peripheries of the community. And in so doing, as she embarks on that kind of life, the funny bit of it is that Ekwefi does not enjoy love at Okonkwo's place. What she encounters, for instance, is that anyway, she she finds herself in a very difficult situation, that out of the 10 births, she only manages to have a daughter as the living child. This is Ezinma, who is able to live on and eventually interacts with the mother, and they become some sort of friends, not just a mother and a daughter. But when she's undergoing this suffering as a woman, you know, lacking a child, and even she becomes envious of the first wife of Okonkwo, and she wants to imagine that now, how do I manage this life? How do I go about these things? To demonstrate again that women can be of great importance and can be of super mind and great power, is that Ekwefi decides that she's not going to focus on anything else, but she's going to ensure that her child Ezinma lives and lives to the expectations of many. And indeed, she is admired by many people within the community. Even Okonkwo himself confirms that he wishes that this Ezinma, the daughter, would be a boy, because he wishes that there could be a boy who can be able to adopt or rather inherit his wealth. But he looks at it that the boy who is there in the first from the first wife, Nwoye, is actually having the attributes, the same characters of you know, feminism, in the sense that he adopts the behavior of the grandfather, that's Unoka, or otherwise Okonkwo's father. And this disappoints Okonkwo to the core, that how could he then have a boy who is not actually a boy, but rather is a girl, so much in the point that this girl who is from Ekwefi, Ezinma, has been able to be loved by many because of her attributes to behave like a man, to do things of men. For example, she wants even to go and work on the farm with his father, only that Okonkwo as a man does not allow women, you know, to participate in what we call the social roles of men within that Igbo community. Another thing is that when we look at women in this book, like Ekwefi, when she received a lot of beatings from Okonkwo, you know, there's nobody who's concerned about such beatings. You know, Okonkwo threatens even to shoot this lady, but she remains within this family. But when Ojogo, the third wife, is beaten, particularly on that week of peace, it calls for everyone to come and say, Okonkwo, this is wrong. I mean, Ojogo's beating is able to elicit men to come and society to come and say, Okonkwo, what you are doing to your family is not good, and you ought not have beaten this wife at this time when we are having what? A peace week. We are supposed to enter into a moment that everyone has to appreciate peace. So there is a lot of sense in what we see women playing as key roles in this book of things fall apart. For instance, if I were to mention, just as I come to conclusion, if I were to mention that when Cielo, a priestess, takes this girl Ezinma into the evil forest, Ekwefi finds it difficult to ignore that beat. She also decides in the darkness to follow. And Okonkwo, because he has that fear of demonstrating weakness, he also decides to follow from a distance to see to it that actually eventually they have to come back with the daughter back home. So you can see that there is a great deal of women doing a lot of good work in things fall apart. And that is why I want to recommend that when you are reading this book, don't only read with a male eye, but also try to read this book with a feminist eye, because when you do so, you'll be able to appreciate this book beyond what we know as the normal circumstances of this novel. Mlunda Slingi is my name, and thank you so much.